The crimson dust settled across Anna Reeves' boots as she walked the perimeter of the nesting grounds. 3 years on this planet had taught her to read the signs that most off-worlders missed. The way the twin suns cast purple shadows at dusk. How the stellar dragons hummed different frequencies when content versus alarmed. Which paths through the crystalline rock formations led to the outer sensor arrays and which dead-ended at sheer cliffs. She checked her handheld scanner, noting the energy signatures from the nesting chambers. 12 adult dragons, currently dormant in their evening rest cycle. 43 eggs in various stages of development. Everything appeared normal, exactly as it should be. Yet something felt wrong. The numbers on her display flickered slightly, a distortion she had learned never to ignore. Anna diverted from her usual route, heading toward the western boundary where the sanctuary met wild terrain. The conservation station trusted her judgment completely. They had to. She was the only human the dragons tolerated this close to their breeding grounds. Other staff members could observe from the research facility 5 kilometers away, but Anna lived among them. She had earned that privilege through patience, respect, and an almost supernatural ability to understand their needs. The scanner's fluctuation grew stronger as she approached sensor array 7. Her heart rate picked up. Someone had tampered with the equipment. Fresh scratches marked the weatherproof casing, and the backup power cell had been removed entirely. This was not equipment failure. This was deliberate sabotage. A sound reached her ears, voices carried on the wind. Anna dropped low behind a boulder formation, killing her scanner's display light. 2 figures moved in the dimness near the cliff edge, their movements quick and purposeful. They wore dark environmental suits without identification patches. Her stomach tightened. Poachers. She activated her emergency beacon, a silent signal that would reach the research station. Help would come, but not for at least 20 minutes. The poachers had positioned themselves near one of the secondary nesting caves, a smaller chamber where 2 dragons had laid eggs just last month. Those eggs would fetch astronomical prices on the black market. Wealthy collectors across the galaxy paid fortunes for genetic material from endangered species. Anna needed to keep them away from that cave. She needed to be visible to draw their attention. She stood up from her hiding spot and called out in her most authoritative voice. The figures spun toward her. One raised what looked like a harvesting tool. The other lifted a weapon. The plasma discharge lit up the twilight like a miniature sun. Anna felt the impact before the pain registered, a burning sensation that spread across her left side. She stumbled backward, firing her own stun pistol wildly. The poachers scattered, one of them dropping their equipment bag. They had not expected resistance. Most conservators were scientists, not fighters. Anna pressed her hand against her side, feeling the wet heat of blood soaking through her jacket. The wound was bad, worse than anything she had experienced before, but she stayed on her feet, moving toward the dropped equipment bag. She kicked it over the cliff edge and heard it crash on the rocks below. The poachers would not get what they came for. They retreated into the darkness, shouting at each other in a language she did not recognize. Anna waited until their footsteps faded completely before allowing herself to collapse against the nearest rock face. Her vision swam. The pain came in waves now, each one stronger than the last. She fumbled for her medical kit, hands shaking as she applied emergency sealant to the plasma burn. The wound needed proper treatment, a medical facility with sterile equipment and regenerative therapy. But Anna could not leave. If the poachers returned, if they found the nesting grounds unguarded, the eggs would be gone by morning. The stellar dragons were down to their last viable population. Every egg mattered. Every life represented hope for a species teetering on extinction. She made her way to the storage shed near the central observation point, moving slowly to avoid reopening the wound. Inside, she found more medical supplies and wrapped her torso tightly with bandages. The pain made her gasp, but she forced herself to work through it. She changed her blood-stained jacket for a spare and disposed of the ruined clothing in the recycling unit. Anna swallowed 2 stimulant tablets and drank half a bottle of water. The drugs would keep her functional for a while, masking the worst of the pain and preventing shock. She knew it was dangerous, pushing her body this far. But what choice did she have? The dragons needed her. They trusted her to protect them. As she stepped back outside, three small shapes bounded toward her through the gathering darkness. The cubs, Ash, Ruby, and Flint, had imprinted on her when they hatched 8 months ago. They followed her everywhere during her shifts, learning the boundaries of their world. The sight of them made her chest tighten with emotion. Ash, the smallest of the three, chirped and pressed against her leg. The cub's scales were still soft, not yet hardened into the crystalline armor of adulthood. Ruby and Flint circled around her, their bright eyes reflecting the last traces of sunlight. They sensed something, she could tell. Their movements were more hesitant than usual, their vocalizations carrying an uncertain tone. Anna reached down to stroke Ash's head, forcing a smile she did not feel. The wound throbbed beneath her fresh bandages, and she could feel new blood seeping through despite the sealant. But she could not show weakness. Dragons responded to confidence, to strength. If they detected injury, they might reject her. Injured creatures attracted predators, and dragons had long memories of being hunted. She walked her usual evening route with the cubs trailing behind her, checking each nesting chamber and recording her observations. Every step required concentration, keeping her movements steady despite the spreading numbness in her side. The night ahead would be long, but Anna Reeves had made her choice. She would not abandon her post. Dawn broke over Crimson Ridge with colors that would have seemed impossible on Earth. Gold and violet light streamed through the crystal formations, casting dancing shadows across the nesting grounds. Anna watched the sunrise from her monitoring station, grateful that she had survived the night. Barely. The stimulants had worn off around midnight, leaving her shaking and feverish. She had taken more, knowing she was destroying her body's natural healing processes but unable to stop. The wound beneath her bandages felt hot to the touch, the skin around it swollen and angry. Infection had set in despite the sealant. She needed antibiotics, proper medical care, surgery perhaps. Instead, she had duty. Her hands trembled as she recorded the morning sensor readings. 12 adult dragons accounted for, all eggs showing normal thermal signatures. No signs of intrusion during the night. The poachers had not returned, but Anna could not relax. They would come back. That equipment bag she had kicked over the cliff represented a significant investment. Criminals did not abandon expensive gear without attempting recovery. Ash appeared at her side, the small dragon making soft questioning sounds. The cub had barely left her alone since yesterday evening. Ruby and Flint were close behind, their scales catching the morning light. They looked at her with eyes that seemed far too intelligent for creatures most researchers still classified as non-sentient animals. Anna tried to stand and nearly fell. Her legs felt disconnected from her body, responding sluggishly to mental commands. Ash made a sharp alarm chirp, and the other cubs rushed closer. They pressed against her, providing physical support as she steadied herself. Their concern was obvious even to someone not trained in dragon behavior. She managed a weak smile and stroked their heads. They needed reassurance that everything was fine, that their world remained safe and predictable. But Anna could see the doubt in their movements. Dragons possessed senses humans could only theorize about. They could detect electromagnetic fields, temperature changes of fractions of a degree, chemical signatures in the air. What could they smell on her? Blood, fear, the sour scent of infection. Anna forced herself through her morning routine. Water stations needed refilling. Nest temperature monitors required calibration. The observation tower sensors demanded a manual reset after yesterday's sabotage. Simple tasks that now felt like climbing mountains. Each movement sent fresh pain radiating from her wounded side. The cubs followed her everywhere, maintaining a closer distance than usual. When she climbed the ladder to the tower platform, Flint made distressed sounds from below. Ruby paced in circles, agitated. Ash tried to grab her pant leg gently between small teeth, attempting to prevent her from ascending. She paused on the ladder, looking down at them. Their behavior was unprecedented. Dragon cubs typically played during morning hours, chasing each other through the rock formations or practicing their emerging flight capabilities. Instead, all three remained focused on her with obvious worry. Anna completed her work on the tower and descended carefully. Her vision blurred twice on the climb down, forcing her to grip the rungs with desperate strength. At the bottom, she leaned against the tower base and closed her eyes, just for a moment, just to gather strength. When she opened them again, the sun had moved significantly across the sky. She had lost time, slipping in and out of consciousness. The cubs sat in a tight semicircle around her, watching, waiting. Ash had positioned directly in front of her face, the small dragons breathing synchronized with her own as if monitoring her life signs. Anna pushed herself upright, ignoring the wave of dizziness. She walked toward the water station, intending to refill the containers. Her foot caught on an uneven patch of ground and she stumbled, catching herself on a boulder. The impact jarred her wound and she felt something tear inside. Fresh blood bloomed across her bandages. The cubs saw it. They reacted immediately with high-pitched alarm calls, circling her rapidly. Anna pulled her jacket closed, hiding the evidence. She spoke to them in soothing tones, the same calm voice she used during thunderstorms or when the adult dragons showed signs of stress. But the cubs were not calmed. Flint ran to where she had stumbled, sniffing the ground. The small dragon found what Anna had hoped to hide, droplets of blood on the dusty earth. Flint's vocalization changed pitch, becoming urgent and distressed. Ruby joined the investigation, then Ash. All three examined the evidence with focused intensity. Anna watched them with growing concern. Dragon intelligence remained poorly understood, but she knew these cubs were smart. They solved puzzles in the enrichment exercises. They remembered complex patterns. They understood cause and effect. And now they had discovered her secret. Ash looked from the blood drops to Anna, then back again. The small dragon's posture changed, becoming alert and purposeful. Ruby and Flint fell silent, watching their sibling. Some communication passed between them, too subtle for Anna to interpret. Then Ash began following her trail backward, nose close to the ground. The cub was tracking her, following the nearly invisible traces of blood she had left during her rounds. Ruby joined the search pattern, working in parallel. Flint remained near Anna, making soft, concerned sounds. The message was clear. They knew she was hurt. They knew she was hiding it, and they were investigating the extent of the damage. Anna tried to call them back, but her voice came out weak and unconvincing. The cubs ignored her, continuing their search with remarkable determination. They found the storage shed where she had changed her blood-stained jacket yesterday. Ash pawed at the door until it opened slightly, then squeezed inside. Moments later, distressed chirps echoed from within. Ruby and Flint responded immediately, rushing into the shed. Anna heard them moving things around, their vocalizations becoming increasingly alarmed. When they emerged, Ash carried something in gentle jaws. The discarded bandages from yesterday, still stained with her blood. The three cubs sat before the shed, the evidence arranged between them. They looked at Anna with expressions she could only describe as accusatory. "You are hurt," their postures seemed to say. "You are hurt badly, and you have been lying to us." Anna sank down onto a nearby rock, no longer able to maintain the pretense of strength. The cubs approached slowly, Ash still carrying the bloodied bandages. They gathered around her, not playful or energetic as usual, but grave and serious. They understood. Perhaps not the details, but the essential truth. Their guardian was dying, and she needed help that they could not provide. Anna rested against the sun-warmed boulder, trying to convince her body to move. She had observations to record, equipment to monitor, a dozen small tasks that kept the sanctuary functioning. But her strength had reached its limit. The infection burned through her system like fire, turning simple thought into a struggle. The cubs remained nearby, their earlier distress giving way to something else: purpose. Anna watched through fever-glazed eyes as they held what looked like a conference. Ash chirped in a specific pattern and the other two responded with matching vocalizations. They were not random sounds. This was communication, complex and intentional. Flint approached her cautiously, touching her hand with a scaled snout. The dragon's body temperature ran hotter than human baseline, and the contact felt good against her chilled skin. Ruby circled behind her, pressing gently against her back, supporting her. Ash remained at a distance, watching with those unnervingly intelligent eyes. Anna knew she should move to the monitoring station, complete her reports, but her body refused to cooperate. She managed to reach the water bottle clipped to her belt and took a small sip. The liquid felt like acid on her parched throat. How long since she had eaten? Since she had slept properly? Time had become unreliable, stretching and compressing without pattern. She must have lost consciousness again because when awareness returned, the sun had shifted position. An hour had passed, maybe two. The cubs were gone, all three of them. Anna felt a spike of panic cut through the fever haze. Cubs never wandered far from the nesting grounds. Their parents kept them close, protective of their vulnerable offspring. She tried to stand and made it halfway before collapsing back against the rock. Her legs would not support her weight anymore. The wound had stopped bleeding externally, but she suspected internal damage. The plasma burn had cut deeper than she initially thought, possibly damaging organs. Without medical intervention, she had days at most, maybe hours. The adult dragons would find her eventually. They would investigate, sniff her cooling body, and likely abandon this nesting site. Dragons associated death with danger. Her corpse would contaminate the area in their perception, forcing them to relocate eggs in various stages of development. The stress could kill the embryos. The species could not afford that loss. Anna laughed, a broken sound that ended in a cough. She had tried so hard to protect them, and in the end she would cause the very catastrophe she feared. The irony felt cruel. Movement in the distance caught her attention. The cubs had returned, running at full speed across the rocky terrain. But they were not alone. They were being followed by automated security drones from the research station. The small flying machines hovered behind the dragons, maintaining careful distance. The cubs reached her and immediately began their alarm calls again, louder and more insistent than before. Ash positioned at her left side while Ruby took the right. Flint stood directly in front of her, facing away, small body rigid with protective stance. They were guarding her. Anna's communication device crackled to life. She had forgotten she was wearing it. Dr. Patricia Walsh's voice came through, sharp with concern. "Anna, we have 3 dragon cubs at our perimeter fence. They appeared about 30 minutes ago making distress calls. Our drones tracked them back to your location. Are you in danger? Please respond." Anna fumbled for the device, her fingers clumsy. "Patricia," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Poachers yesterday. I am wounded. The cubs. They went for help." Silence on the other end, then a stream of rapid questions. Anna could not process them all. She tried to explain about the sabotaged sensors, the confrontation, her decision to stay at her post. The words came out jumbled, fever-distorted. "We are coming," Patricia said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Stay where you are. We will bring medical support. 20 minutes." The connection cut off. Anna looked at the 3 cubs gathered around her. They had understood. Somehow, these 8-month-old dragons had recognized that she needed help beyond what they could provide. They had left the safety of familiar territory, crossed into areas they had never explored, and found other humans. They had led those humans back to her. Ash made a soft sound, almost like a purr. The small dragon pressed closer, sharing body heat. Ruby did the same from the other side. Anna felt tears on her face and realized she was crying. Not from pain, though that remained constant, from overwhelming emotion. These creatures, these supposedly simple animals, had saved her life. She stroked their scales with trembling hands. "Smart cubs," she whispered, Good cubs, you brought help. Flint maintained the protective stance, watching the path the drones had taken, waiting for the humans to arrive. The little dragon had positioned as a guardian, ready to defend if needed. The role Anna had played for them, now reversed. Time passed in strange jumps. Anna drifted between awareness and unconsciousness, held upright only by the cubs pressed against her sides. She heard voices eventually, running footsteps on rock. The cubs chirped urgently, calling to the approaching humans. Patricia appeared first, her face going pale at the sight. "Get the stretcher," she shouted to someone behind her. "She is in shock, possibly septic. Move." Hands touched Anna, professional and efficient. Someone cut away her blood-soaked bandages while another started an IV line. The medical officer, whose name Anna could not remember, made worried sounds as he examined the plasma burn. Someone else took her vital signs, numbers called out in terse medical shorthand. The cubs refused to move away. They had to be gently coaxed aside to allow the medical team access. Even then, they remained close, watching every movement with suspicious attention. Ash hissed when someone moved too roughly, a warning that made the security officer step back with raised hands. Patricia knelt beside Anna, gripping her hand. "You stubborn fool," she said, but her eyes were wet. "Why did you not call for help immediately?" Anna tried to answer, but the medical officer was fitting an oxygen mask over her face. She managed to turn her head toward the cubs instead. They understood. She tried to communicate through expression alone. They understood and they saved me. As they lifted her onto the stretcher, Anna caught sight of the blood trail she had left behind. Drops and smears marking her path over the past 2 days. The cubs had followed that trail, used it to track her movements, to understand the extent of her injury. And then they had made a choice no one thought dragons capable of making. They had gone for help. The medical bay at the research station hummed with equipment Anna had never noticed before. She floated in and out of consciousness, aware of urgent voices and the sharp smell of disinfectant. Someone had removed the ruined bandages and was cleaning her wound, the pain cutting through whatever drugs they had given her. She tried to speak, but her mouth would not cooperate. Dr. Walsh appeared above her, backlit by harsh white lights. "You are safe now, we have you. The infection is severe but treatable. You are going to survive, Anna. Do you understand? You are going to survive." Anna wanted to ask about the cubs, about the nesting grounds, about the poachers. But darkness pulled her down again before the words could form. She dreamed of plasma fire and blood trails, and 3 small dragons following her through an endless maze of crystal formations. When true awareness returned, she found herself in a recovery room with monitoring equipment beeping steadily nearby. Her left side felt numb, the wound site packed with regenerative gel and sealed beneath clean bandages. An IV drip fed antibiotics into her system while another line delivered pain medication and nutrients. She was alive. Against all probability, she was alive. Movement near the window caught her attention. Anna turned her head carefully and felt her breath catch. The 3 cubs sat outside in the designated observation area, pressed against the transparent barrier. They had not left. They had followed the medical transport back to the station and taken up position as close to her as regulations allowed. Ash saw her move and made an excited chirp that brought the other 2 scrambling over. All 3 pressed their snouts against the window, their eyes bright with what Anna could only describe as relief. They had been waiting, watching, making sure she survived. The door opened and Patricia entered, carrying a data pad and a cup of what smelled like actual coffee. She noticed Anna looking at the cubs and smiled. "They have been there since we brought you in. We tried to coax them back to the sanctuary, but they refused to budge. The adult dragons are confused. This behavior is unprecedented." Anna tried to speak, but her throat was too dry. Patricia held a cup of water to her lips, supporting her head. The liquid felt like a miracle. "The cubs," Anna managed after several sips. "They saved me." "They did more than that. Patricia said, settling into a chair beside the bed. They proved that we have been fundamentally wrong about dragon intelligence for decades. The researchers are having academic breakdowns trying to process the implications. She pulled up video files on her data pad and turned it so Anna could see. The footage showed the cubs' journey from the nesting grounds to the research station. They moved with clear purpose, pausing at intersections to orient themselves, avoiding obstacles, working together when terrain proved difficult. This was not instinct. This was reasoning. Another video showed them at the perimeter fence, making their distress calls. But it was not random noise. Analysis software had broken down the vocalizations into distinct patterns. They were modulating pitch and rhythm deliberately, creating variations that corresponded to different levels of urgency. They were trying to communicate in a language humans could understand. The Galactic Wildlife Federation sent a team, Patricia continued. They arrived this morning to investigate the poaching incident, but now they are more interested in the cubs. Anna, if what these three did can be replicated, if other dragons show similar capabilities, it changes everything. Conservation status, legal protections, even basic research ethics. We might have been treating sentient beings like animals. Anna looked at the cubs through the window. Ash had pressed one small clawed hand against the barrier, the gesture achingly human-like. They knew I needed help, Anna said quietly. They understood the concept of fetching other humans. That requires abstract thinking, understanding of social structures, ability to plan and execute complex action. We teach those concepts to children as developmental milestones. Patricia nodded. The Federation team wants to run cognitive tests, but I told them the cubs stay with you. They have bonded, imprinted. Separating them now could cause psychological harm, to the cubs and to you. Over the following days, Anna's recovery progressed faster than expected. The regenerative treatments worked efficiently, knitting damaged tissue and fighting the infection. But she noticed that her healing seemed to correlate with the cubs' visits. Patricia had authorized supervised contact after the third day, allowing the cubs into the medical bay for short periods. They approached her bed with extreme caution, sniffing carefully before touching her with gentle snouts. Ash climbed up onto the bed despite regulations, curling against Anna's uninjured side. Ruby and Flint remained on the floor but maintained constant physical contact, one paw each resting on the bed frame. The research team documented everything, recording the cubs' behaviors and Anna's physiological responses. Her heart rate stabilized when the cubs were present. Her stress hormones dropped. Even her body temperature normalized. The dragons provided measurable health benefits simply by being near. Patricia shared other news during her daily visits. The poachers had been captured attempting to return to Crimson Ridge. Orbital Security had been tracking black market communications and set an ambush. The criminals were now in custody, facing significant charges. Enhanced protection protocols had been implemented around all stellar dragon sanctuaries across the sector. Anna had received commendations from both planetary authorities and the Galactic Federation. Her actions had prevented a genetic theft that could have devastated the species recovery program. Politicians talked about medals and public ceremonies. Anna just wanted to return to the nesting grounds. The medical officer cleared her for limited duty on day 8. Patricia walked with her to the transport vehicle that would take them back to the sanctuary. The cubs bounded ahead, clearly excited to return home. They kept circling back to check on Anna, making sure she followed at a pace her healing body could maintain. The adult dragons had maintained the nesting grounds in Anna's absence, but their behavior showed signs of stress. Egg temperatures had fluctuated. Several adults had become territorial with each other. Dragons needed routine and consistency. They needed their human guardian. Anna stood at the sanctuary entrance, breathing in the familiar scent of crystal dust and dragon musk. The cubs rushed past her, calling to their parents. The adult dragons emerged from nesting chambers, examining their offspring carefully. Then they turned their attention to Anna. She stood still, allowing them to approach. A massive female, mother to Ruby, stretched her neck forward and sniffed Anna carefully. The dragon's nostrils flared, detecting the lingering scent of medical treatments and healing wounds. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the female made a low, rumbling sound, not aggressive but something else. Acceptance. Recognition. She turned and walked back to her nesting chamber, the universal dragon's signal that all was well. The other adults followed her lead, returning to their routines. Anna felt tension drain from her shoulders. She had feared rejection, that showing vulnerability would break the trust she had built. Instead, the dragons had accepted her return without hesitation. Perhaps the cubs had communicated something to their elders. Perhaps the adults simply understood that injury did not equal weakness. The three cubs remained at Anna's side as she completed her first walkthrough in over a week. They were quieter than usual, more watchful, still protecting her. 3 weeks after her return to the sanctuary, Anna sat in her small quarters reviewing the latest research reports. The scientific community had exploded with interest in the cubs' rescue behavior. Papers were being written, theories proposed, entire conferences scheduled to discuss the implications. Dragon intelligence was being reassessed across every settled world that hosted similar species. The Federation team had established a permanent observation post at the sanctuary, though Patricia made sure they maintained respectful distance. The researchers wanted controlled experiments, cognitive testing, brain scans. Anna had refused most of their requests. The cubs were not laboratory subjects. They were individuals who had saved her life, and she would not reward that act by treating them like research material. But she did agree to some observational studies on her terms. The team could watch and document natural behaviors. They could analyze vocalizations and social interactions. They could propose enrichment activities that might reveal cognitive abilities. Nothing invasive, nothing that caused stress. The results were remarkable. Ash, Ruby, and Flint demonstrated problem-solving skills that matched or exceeded young primates. They understood object permanence, cause and effect, even basic tool use. They could work cooperatively to achieve goals that none could accomplish alone. They showed individual personalities, preferences, what could only be called emotions. Most significantly, they showed empathy. Not just for each other, but for Anna and eventually other humans they learned to trust. They could read human body language, respond to emotional states, adjust their behavior based on social context. These were not the actions of simple creatures driven by instinct. The Galactic Wildlife Federation had fast-tracked a review of stellar dragon classification status. The species would likely be reclassified from Category 4, protected animals, to Category 2, sentient non-human persons. The change carried massive legal implications. Dragons would gain rights, protections, legal standing. Poaching would become not just theft but a crime against sentience. Anna watched the cubs play outside her window, chasing each other through the crystal formations in the evening light. They had grown noticeably in recent weeks, their scales hardening and colors deepening. Ash's wingspan had nearly doubled. Ruby could maintain flight for almost 30 seconds now. Flint had developed the characteristic ridge pattern that indicated dominant genetics. They still stayed close to her during patrols, but their confidence had grown. They explored more independently, ranging farther from the nesting grounds under adult supervision. They were growing up, becoming the magnificent creatures they were meant to be. But they had not forgotten what they had done, what they had proven. Patricia visited that evening with news. The Federation wants to establish a research program here, focused on dragon-human cooperation. They are proposing it as a model for other conservation sites. You would direct it if you are interested. Anna considered the offer. It meant more responsibility, more politics, more time dealing with bureaucrats instead of doing the work she loved. but it also meant protecting the dragons from exploitation, ensuring their well-being remained the priority. What about the cubs? They would be part of it, obviously, but on your terms. The program would study natural interactions, document communication development, explore the possibilities of true interspecies cooperation, not experiments, partnership. The word felt right. Partnership. That was what Anna had with the cubs, what she had been building with all the dragons here. Not domination or control, but mutual respect and collaboration. She agreed to the program with strict conditions. The dragon's needs came first, always. Research would be observational and non-invasive. The sanctuary would never become a tourist attraction or media circus. Patricia smiled and said the Federation had expected nothing less. Word of the Cubs' actions had spread beyond scientific circles. News services across the settled worlds had picked up the story. Humanity and their unlikely dragon saviors made compelling headlines. Anna tried to ignore the attention, but it was difficult when journalists kept requesting interviews and documentary crews applied for access permits. What struck her most in the coverage was how many people seemed surprised that non-human intelligence existed. Humanity had spread across the stars, encountered dozens of alien species, and yet still maintained a fundamental assumption of human superiority. The Cubs had challenged that assumption simply by caring enough to save one wounded woman. Anna spent her evenings working with linguists who were trying to decode dragon communication. They had identified over 200 distinct vocalizations, each with subtle variations that conveyed different meanings. The complexity rivaled human language, though the structure was entirely different. Dragons communicated through layered sound, multiple meanings transmitted simultaneously through pitch, rhythm, and harmonic frequencies. Ash had become particularly engaged in the communication studies. The young dragon would repeat sounds the linguists played, attempting to match human speech patterns. It was frustrating for both sides, their vocal anatomy too different to produce each other's natural sounds. But they were finding middle ground, developing a shared vocabulary of gestures and simple vocalizations. One evening, Ash approached Anna while she was recording observations. The dragon made a specific sound, then touched Anna's arm gently. The gesture was deliberate, communicative. Anna recognized the sound from her first days at the sanctuary. It was what dragons used to greet each other after separation. "Hello to you too," Anna said, understanding flooding through her. Ash was not just mimicking. The dragon understood the concept of greetings, of acknowledging presence and relationship. This was intentional communication. Ruby and Flint joined them, each making their own greeting sounds. Anna responded to each one, her voice thick with emotion. They were talking to her, actually talking with purpose and meaning. The linguists would be thrilled with the recording, but Anna kept the moment private. This was between her and the Cubs, a conversation that needed no audience. Patricia found her later, watching the Cubs settle into their evening rest positions. "You are crying," she observed. "They are talking," Anna said. "Really talking. Not just sounds, but communication with intent and meaning. They understand language, Patricia. Maybe not the same way we do, but they understand. The Federation team will want to document this." Anna nodded. Tonight this is just for us." They stood in comfortable silence as the twin suns set and Crimson Ridge's 3 moons rose overhead. The dragons hummed their evening songs, a chorus that had probably echoed across this landscape for thousands of years before humans arrived. Anna had always found the sound beautiful. Now she wondered what they were singing about, what stories and knowledge were being passed through those complex harmonies. The Cubs had opened a door that could never be closed. They had proven that intelligence, empathy, and heroism were not unique to humanity. Other species could think, feel, choose to act with courage and compassion. The galaxy was full of minds, waiting to be understood. 6 months had transformed Crimson Ridge from a quiet conservation sanctuary into a beacon of interspecies cooperation. The research program attracted scientists from across the galaxy, all wanting to understand what had happened here. But the sanctuary itself remained unchanged in the ways that mattered. The dragons still nested in their crystal caves. Anna still walked her daily patrols, and 3 young dragons still followed her everywhere, though they were no longer quite so young. Ash had grown to nearly adult size, with wingspan reaching 4 meters. The dragon's scales had deepened to a rich charcoal color shot through with veins of crimson. Ruby had developed the vibrant coloring that gave the species its name, scales like polished garnets catching the light. Flint showed the muscular build of a dominant male, already larger than most adults in the sanctuary. They were magnificent and they were still hers, not in ownership but in bond. They chose to stay near her, chose to participate in the communication research, chose to help bridge the gap between their species and humanity. Every choice was theirs to make. Anna stood at the overlook point, watching the nesting ground spread below. 43 eggs had become 43 hatchlings over the past months. The population was growing, stabilizing. Other sanctuaries reported similar success as poaching decreased under stricter enforcement. The species had stepped back from the edge of extinction. But the impact went beyond stellar dragons. The cub story had sparked a movement across the settled worlds. Other conservationists reported breakthrough moments with the species they protected. A researcher on the ice moon of Talus documented pack cooperation between ice wolves that suggested complex social structures. Marine biologists in the crest system recorded songs from deep dwellers that showed mathematical patterns. Humanity was finally listening to what had been there all along. Intelligence wore many forms, existed in many minds. The assumption that humans stood alone in consciousness was crumbling under the weight of evidence. Patricia joined Anna at the overlook, bringing news from the Federation Council. They approved the proposal. Crimson Ridge becomes the first interspecies cooperation zone. Full legal protection, enhanced funding, diplomatic status. No commercial exploitation allowed, ever. Anna felt relief wash through her. The sanctuary would be safe. The dragons would be protected not just as endangered animals, but as sentient beings with inherent rights. Their home would remain theirs. There is more, Patricia continued. They want to establish similar programs on 15 other worlds. Protection zones where endangered sentient species can recover without human interference. You helped create the model, Anna. This is your legacy. Legacy felt like too grand a word. Anna had simply done her job, protected the creatures in her care. The cubs had done the rest. They were the ones who proved what was possible when species chose cooperation over dominance. Ash landed beside her with the grace that came from months of flight practice. The dragon had learned to approach quietly, no longer startling Anna with sudden arrivals. Ruby and Flint followed, settling on rocks nearby. All 3 watched the sunset with what looked like appreciation for beauty. The linguists had made significant progress in understanding dragon communication. They still could not speak each other's languages, the physical differences too great. But they had developed a shared vocabulary of nearly 500 concepts that both species understood. Basic needs, emotions, warnings, questions. It was crude compared to either species' natural language, but it worked. Ash made a specific sound combination that the team had identified as meaning roughly content together. Anna smiled and made the human approximation, a humming pattern in her throat. Ash leaned against her, a gesture that had become their version of a hug. The research team had documented everything, publishing papers that were reshaping xenobiology and cognitive science. But the numbers and graphs missed something essential. They could measure brain activity and decode vocalizations, but they could not quantify what Anna felt sitting here with 3 dragons who had saved her life. They could not capture the moment when Ash had first deliberately used language, when Ruby had shown concern for a wounded bird, when Flint had protected a smaller dragon from an aggressive adult. These were not just intelligent creatures. They were people in their own right, with thoughts and feelings and choices that mattered. Anna's wound had healed completely, leaving only a pale scar that she considered a badge of honor. She had nearly died protecting these dragons. They had saved her in return. That cycle of mutual care and sacrifice meant something profound about the possibilities of different species coexisting. Other conservation workers visited Crimson Ridge regularly now, learning from Anna's methods. She taught them what she had learned: patience, respect, the willingness to see beyond human assumptions, the understanding that protection meant empowerment, not control. Some visitors struggled with the concept. They wanted to help but could not release the belief that humans knew best. Anna would take them to watch the dragons and let them observe natural behavior. The complex social structures, the problem-solving, the care they showed for their young. The evidence spoke for itself. The cubs had become ambassadors in their own right, representatives of their species in dealings with the Federation. They participated in meetings via holographic link, their vocalizations translated by the AI systems the linguists had developed. They had opinions about conservation policy, about research ethics, about their own futures. Watching them engage with human officials, seeing dragons and humans negotiate as equals, Anna felt something shift in her understanding of the universe. This was what the future could be. Not human expansion across the stars with other species as resources or obstacles, but genuine cooperation, multiple forms of intelligence working together toward shared goals. As the stars emerged overhead, Anna sat surrounded by her unlikely family. 3 dragons who had grown from curious cubs into powerful adults, who had taught humanity that heroism, intelligence, and compassion were not uniquely human traits, who had proven that the measure of a species was not technology or language, but the willingness to help those in need. Ash made the sound for home, and Anna agreed. This was home, not just a place but a community built on mutual respect and understanding, where humans and dragons lived not as masters and subjects but as partners in protecting something precious. The future spread before them like the star-filled sky, full of possibilities no one had imagined before 3 young dragons decided that one wounded human was worth saving. That single act of compassion had changed the galaxy. And Anna knew, watching her dragon family settle in for the night, that this was only the beginning.